Welcome to Triple B, where we are Black, beautiful, and brave.
Where our goal is to inspire and empower Black single women to embrace their beauty and to be brave. I'm Candy.
I'm Ayana, and we are your hosts.
Thank you for joining us today on our Black, Beautiful, and Brave podcast. Why Black? Why beautiful? Why brave?
We created this space for several reasons: to hear from a Black Christian woman's perspective, to empower single women.
We want to address issues that affect Black women from our lenses, not the males, not the society, the world, not the church. Our perspective.
Everybody has something to say about Black, single Christian women except us.
Oftentimes, Black women's voices are in a box.
We are not a monolith.
Everyone has something to say about Black professional and non-professional Christian women who are single.
But no more. Enough.
It is our time to talk transparently and to create change.
All right, let's go. Let's do it.
We want the rest of the world to hear what we talk about. And we are back. Welcome back to all of our Triple B listeners. This is Candy.
This is Ayana. Glad to have you listening today. So guess what our topic is? Candy, can you tell us what we'll be talking about?
All right. Well, okay. She put me on the spot. Today we want to talk about, I guess this is like a trigger word for some people. It could be dress reform. Is there a need for dress reform? That is our topic for today.
That's right. And dress reform referring specifically to women.
Per Ayana.
Yes, because this is Black, Beautiful, and Brave. And we said we cater to Black women and women in general. So, yeah.
So let's think about this. When it comes to dress reform, what do you hear? What do you hear when you hear the word dress reform?
I hear that there's something wrong or some work that needs to be done in our existing attire.
Who's our?
Our meaning women, females.
So when you think of dress reform, for you, it exclusively referred to women.
No.
How women dress.
No, not necessarily. I mean, like for me, for this podcast, because we focus on women, we'll be talking about women and female dress reform. But it can refer to men too, because the males also need some kind of dress reform. So, but that's not what we're talking about today.
I think we are. For me, when I think of dress reform, this is for everyone.
Right.
And so women can have an opinion about how men dress, just as men have an opinion about how women dress. So this podcast is about our opinions, not just only topics that affect us only, but even the topic of men dress reform affects us as well. And how men have an opinion on how we dress, and how the way men dress also affects us as well. Because some men, younger men, who do they dress for? Women, to attract women. They're going to dress what they believe, what women like, right? The same way women dress in a way that maybe to attract another man. Is it not so?
Yeah, so this is going to be a long podcast, it seems, so we'll have to do part 1 and part 2.
Well, we'll see where it takes us. I'm just not exclusive to, certain thoughts. And when it comes to dress reform, it's not exclusive to women. Because normally when you hear that, they're talking about women, especially in a Christian church, and it's in a conservative church.
Yeah.
Usually dress reform only refers to women.
Right. And I agree with that. I just didn't know we are going to talk about the men too. But that's fine. We could talk about the men, because the men also need some kind of dress reform, because me in particular, I don't like to see the brothers in a wife beater shirt, right? So yeah, there's some I think it does, in my mind, include men. And I didn't expect us to talk about the men, but sure, let's do it.
If we're talking about dress reform, we'll talk about dress reform. If there is a need, that's that's my question. Is there a need for dress reform? As you can already hear, Ayana and I could be on opposite ends of this particular conversation.
What? No. No, never.
Oh. Is there a need? You hear a lot of people talk about the need for dress reform or the need for how we dress, and it needs to be changed, especially if you carry the title of a Christian, a man or a woman of God, right? There should be some type of standard when it comes to that. And so Ayana sent me a interesting video not too long ago about this said topic, from a particular Christian speaker, and I think this is on YouTube, and I think it's not their YouTube, someone else clipped their voice and put it to video of different artists, gospel artists, and to talk about what she said. So I guess maybe, do you want to play a little clip?
Sure. We'll get us started.
Okay. Now this clip is about 34 minutes and 50 seconds long. We're not going to play the entire thing.
Not at all.
But you could, with the little clip that we're going to play, you could probably hear the sentiment of where this speaker is coming from.
We are in the life and the way of the millennials, and we're in the change, and and everything is, we serving the Lord without religion, and we want spirituality, and I am number one that is raising the banner for that. But what I don't get is where the church has gone to. What I really don't get is what I'm seeing happening as it relates to the body of Christ, and just the respect that we're supposed to have as women of God. That part is confusing me. It's confusing me when I look up and I see people on Sunday mornings doing praise and worship in bodycon dresses. Seeing women do praise and worship in bodycon dresses that is so tight until I can see the dimples in your behind. So tight until I see your thong. I'm confused about the call of God on our lives. The call of God. And instead of us understanding that we are in a strange land, and that is a part of the promise, and it's a part of the promise because of who we're supposed to be while we're in that land, we are becoming a part of the land. And that's the part that just got me going. That now you can't tell the believers.
All right, that's got her going. Got me going too. As far as her thought. Tell me what are your thoughts so far on what she's saying?
I understand what she's saying, because a lot of things. So going to church now, for some churches, going to church is a fashion parade. For some, depending on your denomination, the actual church you attend, the community that you reside in, going to church can be very much about how you look, right? And I know growing up for me personally in the Caribbean, going to church required that you wear your very best clothes. So I know, like being in the U.S., I've seen variations of that, like people, U.S. and U.K., because I lived some time in the U.K. as well. There are variations of what people consider their very best or church-appropriate clothes. But here the speaker is talking about the fact that the clothes that you're wearing, yes, they are like they're good clothes, they're great clothes, but they're clothes that focus more on yourself than on, let's say, worship and representing God. That was my impression.
And so for me, I feel like the preacher or the person who's speaking is more so attacking women versus attacking. To me, there's a greater issue that needs to be addressed because women or individuals don't get on the stage on their own, right? And say, this is what I'm going to do, right? And you call yourself a man of God or a woman of God, and you go to church, doesn't mean you're a perfect person either, right? You may not have been given light to whatever it is, if you would say the light that she has, regarding dress modesty, or how do you come on stage or what have you. She mentioned praise team, right? So it's a team and there's a leader in the team, right? And the praise team belongs to or is associated with the administration or the leadership of the church in a sense, right?
Yeah.
I went to a church once and I did like what they did, where they, as an organization, came up with policy and procedures. What are the rules, right?
So rules requiring focusing on dress.
They came up with rules for their church. This is how we function as a church.
Okay.
Doesn't make it spiritual, but this is our rules. The same way you can go to an institution or you go to a job. This is our dress code. These are our policies. You don't make it spiritual. You can go on a Christian college campus. They have said this is our dress code. And these are the expectations for those who hold these particular roles. That's their institution, their organization's rules. So I believe that a church can do the same thing, right? If you are not to come and sit in the audience, come as you are. But if you are going to hold a position to minister, to, create your rules. What are your standards for those who step onto that stage and they represent this particular organization or this institution? So therefore, if it's women, this is how you can dress. You're not allowed to do this or you're not allowed to do that. And I have seen churches where you're watching them online. They probably did not have a type of standard for those who are on stage. To now you look like, oh, okay, they have a standard. I can see, maybe there were complaints that were made, and so therefore I wouldn't blame the individual. To me, if you're on anyone's stage, blame the stage owner.
That raises an interesting point because, in church, so we are all supposed to be sinners saved by grace. No one is perfect. So I heard you mention, being in church and you're not perfect. But sometimes, as brethren, we don't like to be corrected. We don't like people to come up and say, sister or brother, can I have a word with you? Right? Because when they do that, we're like, oh, how dare he, how dare she? And granted, there are some busybodies in church. I'm in different churches, I'm not going to lie. But a lot of times we are not open to that kind of guidance. Let me say guidance, right? And granted that, as you mentioned, it could go back to the fact that the church does not have a policy as far as things like dress. But then one church could have a policy that, hey, when you go up on stage, just make sure you're covered. So that might mean you could have on a jeans and a nice top, and you're part of the praise team or you're part of the on the pulpit, right? So again, each church may have different guidelines. That might look differently for each church. And
I think that we have to be very specific, right? Because even with your instructions, make sure you're covered. What does that mean?
Exactly.
And so people can take that in different ways. And so you have to be very specific of what your expectations are for those who come on stage and saying, wear this, make sure this is not showing, what have you, no tight dresses, no tight shirts, no tight pants,
for both males and females.
And females.
Right. Because some guys have some pants, they're like tights. They're like,
and you see the imprint, right?
And you see the imprint, right? They're showing off their goods.
So it's not just females showing their body. And I think that the conversation needs to be balanced.
Right.
Sometimes there's a lack of balance in these type of conversations where they continue to attack women and not men, right?
Right. Well, in this clip that we listened to, the speaker was talking specifically about women. That's true. But yes, there does need to be balance. But again, if you start to prescribe the dress wear, then some people start to say, oh, you're too legalistic, right? It's about rend your heart and not your garments. I've heard that a lot as well, that it's not the clothes you wear, it's really about the heart. And that's true too, right? God says you should write his word in your heart. So then what's the standard? Who sets the standard? Is it the pastor who sits down and says, well, hey, this is the expectation for persons who are participating in the program and are up front and in the limelight? Is it the church board or church committee? Is it the members, right? So is there going to be a separate committee that sets the guidelines for each church? And does that vary by church? Does that vary by different conferences or head organizations? Or, so again, to me, that gets pretty messy when we start to think about each church setting its own guidelines.
I don't think it gets messy. I think it takes the ownership of that church. Where I've seen it, the church created a committee just to create policies and procedures.
Right, but who's on the committee? Do they have young persons on the committee?
It's up to the church.
Do they have, because normally when I think...
up to the church.
Right, and again, what one church considers acceptable may not be acceptable in another church.
And I think it's all on how you communicate it. These are our... I believe that you should remove, at that point, you should remove the spiritual component. Just because we do this doesn't make us holier than someone who doesn't, right? These are just our standards because we're here to serve. And we just want to, whatever the purpose and mission and vision of that said committee is clearly stated, that this is why we're doing this. And this is what we're hoping for as an outcome. Just because you don't do it doesn't mean you are not going to make it to heaven, right? And I think it's all on how you communicate. The same way you mentioned there are some people who are not open to receive correction. It's because sometimes it's how correction is given. Correction can be given, or someone coming to you to speak to you and who never spoke to you before, you have no relationship with, and say, and I've seen it happen where it's like, and they could say it in the most loving way, but you don't know me. You don't know my story. You can be in the most loving way, but you don't know me. I may not receive it well. Versus someone who has a relationship with me, right? Who knows me, who knows my story, can speak very harsh to me and I can receive it.
But the Bible doesn't say that someone needs to have a relationship with you.
I'm talking about humankind. And I don't.
Right, but I'm just saying, if it is, we are saying that we are Christians, we are on this pathway, right? The Bible just says that you go to your brother or sister, right, and talk to them one-on-one. It doesn't say it needed to be your best friend. It doesn't need to be your neighbor. She or she doesn't need to be a neighbor from before. It just says that you approach that person.
But what if I don't receive you as a brother or sister? What makes someone your brother and sister? I have to receive you as my brother and sister. You're not automatically my sister. You're not my brother.
So that's a topic for another day, because there are people who are within Christian churches who do not accept or receive or like to be termed or called brother or sister within the church.
Mercy. Yeah.
Right?
If I don't receive you as my brother or sister, I don't view you as that. So therefore you can't, based on what you just shared, what the Bible says, I can't receive that from, because I don't see you as my brother or sister.
And again, that's a huge topic.
Right. So therefore, just because we believe the same does not necessarily mean, this is just a new thought that I'm thinking of now. Just because we believe the same doesn't mean that I receive you as a brother or sister.
That's true.
Because I don't know you.
And I'm not arguing with you, because again, I've seen that play out where people are in the same institution, and even though people are addressing you as every whether it's Saturday or Sunday as brother or sister, you don't receive it. And some people vocalize it, and some people don't. But and the actions are going to tell eventually.
Right. And I think for me, I can say, you're my sister.
Right.
We have a relationship.
Right.
We don't always agree on everything, but I feel like if you tell me something, I can receive it in a way. And if I tell you something like, Ayana, I don't feel this way. Or am I like, yeah, Ayana, you're right. You're right. And I think you've heard me say, yeah, you're right. And I think I've heard you say, yeah, you're right. You may not agree with it, but hear where I'm coming from versus someone else that I don't even know. No, I don't know you.
Yeah.
Right.
But that goes back to this whole, as Christians, we are part of the family of God, right? This whole adoption process by our Heavenly Father. But again, that's a whole different topic. I don't want us to get off track with that. But, coming back to this idea of, what's appropriate and what's not. Because even in the video clip, the speaker mentioned about a bodycon. What's a bodycon? Dress or a bodycon?
Well, she mentioned a bodycon. All you got to do is Google bodycon dress and go to images. There are different types of bodycon. But then she says a tight tight bodycon dress, right? Because you can have a bodycon dress that's not tight. That does it. That can. Some people may say this is appropriate.
Right.
This is modest, right?
So a bodycon meaning, just to define for listeners who may not know what a bodycon dress is.
Go ahead. You looked up the word. Go ahead.
I did, because I was thinking bodycon, maybe body conforming, but it actually says it's a body conscious dress, or a dress that's what we call a close fitting dress. That you would wear that basically conforms to your body, right? It's the shape of your body. It can be tight, or it can be a little more loose. Can you explain to me, right?
I think that it's just more so the cut of the dress, you know, and that's what we have. That's the style or the fashion of today, right? You know, trends change from, because you can have a bodycon dress or a bodycon outfit, and it's not a dress. It could be a suit.
Yeah,
right?
true.
It's just more so the way that it is cut to contour your body figure, right? And so that's the way it is now, right? And so some people can take those type of clothing and wear them too small,
Right.
too tight, you know, contouring way too much of accentuating certain parts of their body.
Right.
Rather be their chest,
Yeah.
be their behind, be
Yeah.
their whatever it is, their abdomen, you know. I think just as way you can take something that is pure and you can make it evil, right?
But then if you go with that definition of it highlighting different parts of your body, then every dress is a bodycon dress.
No, not every dress is. Not every dress is. There's some dresses that do not contour to the whole body, right? You know, there's
So the
some dresses
bodycon
that
must
like-
contour to the whole body.
and so they're like summer dresses. Summer dress is not a bodycon
True, but how often do we wear summer dresses?
during the summer.
For those of us who have some.
And then you can wear summer dresses or that type of style,
Right.
depending on where you live,
Right.
You know,
Right.
you can wear a summer dress all year round in Florida, in South Florida. You definitely can, but you might not. And there's some people who do wear them in the wintertime, and they wear them even up north, but they may have a turtleneck underneath.
That's right.
I've seen that, you know, or they have some type of something to keep them warm underneath, but they like the dress, and it's a flowing dress, right? And so it's up to you as the person who's putting the clothes on. I don't, you know, you do not have to be limited to what society says when you can wear and when you cannot wear.
Right.
As you can tell, there's some young people. It could be like, I remember in South Florida, it could be 80 degrees outside. They're going to wear their hoodies.
Yeah.
You know? And
that's
so-
a different story.
But I'm just saying that, you know, people are going to wear what they want to wear and what makes them feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Right? But, you know, to deem and say one is acceptable and one is not, you know, let someone wear what they want to wear. However, you know, there is a difference by when you go on and you perform somewhere and you represent a company, an agency, an organization. That organization need to set boundaries. These
Yeah.
are what we're doing, and this is not what we're doing. But the speaker on the video clip is, you know, if you were to continue to listen, and she's talking about, you know, people considering themselves women of God, and this is how you're dressed. What? And then I looked at some of the image that was played on the video.
Right.
Some of the images, I'm like, this is not that bad.
Not that
what are
bad.
you talking
Yeah,
about?
some of them were nice.
You know, and granted, this person and some of the images, they're not on stage.
Right.
You know, they're doing their own thing. But I do hear what the speaker is saying about, you know, I don't feel comfortable either myself, you know, showing so much cleavage
Right.
myself. But if I'm at the beach, I'm wearing a bathing suit.
But there was a time when, you know, ladies, or even, you know, just ladies didn't wear bathing suits, right? So that's a different, that's an era thing. But I like the idea of church having a guideline, because your business or the organization that you work with has a dress code, right? Unless you are a swimwear model, right? And even then, as a swimwear model, you still have to wear swimwear. Whatever institution that you work with, they do require that you conform to the dress code. And if you don't, that could be grounds for dismissal.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There you go. That's it. I mean, dress code is dress code. Uniform
Yeah.
is uniform,
Yeah.
right? Can't come to Burger King wearing a McDonald's
McDonald's uniform.
Sure can't. And and if that's not something you're comfortable with,
Yeah.
then guess what? You just go somewhere else.
That's right.
Or you just don't participate in that capacity, right?
Yeah.
If you don't feel comfortable wearing a choir robe to go up and to do the scripture reading, if that's what they require, then guess what? You don't. There's some institutions, I have friends who partake in other denominations program and so forth, as far as being an artist, a musical artist, right? And when they are at their church, they dress the way they want to dress. When they go to this particular type of church, they require them to wear robes. Everybody wear robes,
And they wear it.
And guess what? They wear it.
They wear it.
Granted,
Yep.
they're getting paid to do it.
Exactly.
Right? You're getting paid to do this, and you're getting paid to, to sing wherever. These are both worship experiences. And as a professional that's going to perform in both entities, right? Whatever their rules are, I'm getting paid to do this. I'm doing it, right? Even if you're volunteering,
Right.
If this is what their rules are, then you just follow it. And I've
But
seen
listen-
churches now moving towards that. Not
Right.
enough are, but churches are doing it. Those are the
And I've
rules.
seen people again, they would wear whatever's required for work during the week. But when it comes to church, they're like, well, no one can tell me what to wear. It's about the heart. Again, rend your heart and not your garment, so I can wear whatever I want.
What are you talking about? Are you talking about those who are performing or those who are just attending?
Just attending.
Well, then, hey.
And even some performers.
I think that those are two separate topics and two different points. Someone who's on stage, and I think we've already talked about that. But if you're talking about someone who's just coming to worship, right? And are you saying that churches should put a standard of those who come into their doors and how they should dress?
I'm saying that as a church member, that standard can't just hold for those who are in the pulpit. Because, is it that?
Say it shouldn't?
It should not. So it's not that you're dictating what each member wears every week. But let's say, for example, I'm on the praise team, because I've done that. I've been on the praise team. You go up front, you make sure that whatever you're wearing is not. If I do wear a bodycon type dress, I'd put a jacket over it, like a blazer, right? Just so that it doesn't attract too much attention. Although even the dress that I'm having on, the bodycon dress wouldn't necessarily be that fitted, but I would still put a blazer on. Next week, when I don't have praise team, I shouldn't be in the congregation in my mini skirt, with my a low cut cleavage type dress, just because I'm not on stage this week. Because to me, that's like setting a double standard.
Well, that's up to your own conviction. I'm sorry. That's how I just feel, right? I think that how someone dresses, what they do in their Christian life and how they present themselves is something that the Holy Spirit has to convict them for, right? What
I agree.
you do on your own. What you do when you come on stage is one thing. That's the standard of the institution or of the church. But how I dress on my day-to-day, then that's something that the Holy Spirit needs to convict me of. If I like wearing all of this type of stuff, then
Right.
I'm, wear it. Now, I, as an individual, I might be your friend or sister. I feel a certain way, I may, based on the conversation, like, you might want to, and you might receive it from me.
Right.
Right. Versus
Right.
someone else who's an usher who comes in, hey, and you wearing a shirt that is what they call like a one shoulder, where your one shoulder is out, right? And because she mentioned you got your old shoulder out. I'm like, listen, I remember hearing a preacher said that yes, women shouldn't be showing their shoulders because it looks like an image of a breast.
What?
Yes, a preacher on the stage said that and talked about why women shouldn't wear cut off sleeves when they come to church. Because the shoulder for a man, it's tempting and it looks like a breast. The young women, I was a young college student at the time, like, what? Are you serious? So am I tempting you when I wear my no sleeve? Granted, right now, guys, I'm wearing no sleeves and I'm rubbing on my shoulder.
And it's not tempting me. Well, again, you said it's tempting guys. So,
Man,
yeah.
And so we were like, what? And so.
Well, maybe it could have been a male perspective that we don't know.
This was an
That's
older
true.
preacher who said this, right?
Right.
So it's like, well, I didn't receive that. I
Right.
could not, and I still don't receive that, right?
And it doesn't mean that maybe it's true for him. Maybe that's his truth.
But he's saying, as a preacher,
Right.
the head pastor of this institution,
Right.
this is what he's saying. He could not, you can't tell people how to come to your church. You cannot.
No, you can't. But you
can't.
know what? But
You can,
as you
can
say,
try to convict by if it's on the stage, if that's how
Right.
you feel so strongly, or develop a relationship.
Right.
Go through a course of series of studies about modesty.
Right.
Have conversation. People aren't having conversations with one another.
Right.
And I think that's how change happened now. That's how, praying about it, and that's how you can, the Holy Spirit can convict someone by
Yeah.
having a conversation.
And-
we're not having the conversation, and we're not doing it in love, and we're not developing relationships with young people or with people
or
in
with
general.
people in general, because it's not just young people. They're older people who also have, issues or contradictory behaviors when it comes to dress. And I'm going to say, like, for me personally, growing up as a teenager, I loved short stuff. I love shorts. I love tight, right? So I'm not, like, saying that it's not something that I haven't done. But I just got to a point in my life where I felt like when I come into a room, I want to be looked at as someone who is not looked at not because of the clothes I'm wearing necessarily, and clothes meaning clothes that attract attention, undue attention, especially from males, but more so looked at from a perspective of someone who is able to contribute something intellectually, spiritually to the atmosphere.
Have you ever been looked at or ever felt the opposite when you came into a room? Did you have an experience where you dressed the way you dressed and you didn't feel like people were taking you seriously, that you couldn't contribute, that made you feel the opposite? Did that actually happen to you?
Of course. And that's where I came to eventually to that realization that the clothes do matter. Right? And first impressions count. And whether we realize it or not, what we wear is making a statement. So whether that statement is verbally stated, because some people like to come out and, they might have on a Nike t-shirt, on a, some brand name, right? You are making a statement, you are saying something, and you're going to be received in a particular way. Mm-hmm. And similarly for women, because I know we see on television, these young ladies going to work and they have one of these cute little teeny, what do you call them, those short skirts, and you have a nice little blazer thing or whatever, and you're going to work, but most of your legs are outside. The different people you're meeting, the representatives, the adults, whoever you're meeting, your co-workers, when you come into a room, they're not saying, oh, there's that intelligent girl from IT. The first thing they're seeing is, wow, she has a great body, or she has nice legs, right? And that's not what you want. You want, when you enter a room, that people see you for who you want to be represented as. And if you want to be represented as that powerful, feminine, confident, spiritual woman that you are, then you have to dress like it. And it doesn't mean that you have to wear a turtleneck, but it does mean that you have to dress in a way that represents how you think or how you want to be received.
Who says they want to be received that way?
But that's all I'm saying. It depends on how you want to be received. So but the thing is, we want to dress a particular way to be received a particular way. So you want to dress in a bodycon dress that's super tight, super short, and still want to be received in a respectful, spiritual manner.
But it depends on who's in the room, right? If you have a room full of individuals who may think that way, if you would say older people may think that way, but younger people may not. If you're in a room where you're among your peers and you dress the way you dress, they may not think that of you. You know what I mean? I think it differs, right?
It
differs
does.
in just the same way. If you're talking about being in an executive room, right? Back 20 years ago, looked different than what it looks like now. You know, certain industries where they no longer required business attire.
Right.
When you come into the office, it's very lax. It's very what have you, because now they're able to. They feel as though they can view someone past how they're dressed, and as far as knowing what they can contribute to the team. So therefore, what they are wearing doesn't mean anything, right? You know, I'm just saying, you know,
Right. And I know
I'm
you're giving
loosely speaking,
Right.
But you know, first impression is always important. It may
is.
not only be on how you dress, but how you speak. All of that is inclusive of it.
Right.
You know, especially when you first get started. So a lot of young people now, their goals are not necessarily to become executives and so forth. It's all about entrepreneurship.
True.
It's all about, you know, using media to get your startup, you know.
Right.
Everybody wants to be an influencer, content creator.
That's right.
But I think that the speaker also in this video talked about the millennials, right? You know, this is how millennials are, who are still in industry and who are also becoming entrepreneurs and so forth. You know, this is how they are addressing. You know, we're just open-minded. But a millennial coming into a space full of baby boomers and Generation X, you know, you have to know the room. You got to be able to read the room, right? You know, what are the expectations? And then you conform to what the room is, right? So if I'm going in a room with a whole bunch of baby boomers, I'm going to dress a certain way.
Right,
But if I'm going in a room with a whole bunch of Generation Xers, right? I'm going to dress differently.
Right. And that's the problem, or that's the challenge, because they cannot... They don't know the audience, don't know the room, as you say. So even though you're saying this is you, this is your style, and you're not changing it for anyone, but you still have to understand that you're interacting with different people. And to build your business, you need to build relationships, these business relationships, and you have to know your audiences. So I think that's where, as we go back to this issue of dress reform, knowing what's appropriate with whom, when, where, how. And it doesn't mean that you have to diminish yourself, but it just means that you know how to operate within these different environments.
Yeah, and I think that it was something that you said, I thought, man, I quickly just forgot.
Senior mama. No, you're not that senior. You're not that senior.
Oh, my. But yeah, just more so. Oh, yeah. What I was saying, you made a point that, or when I asked you, when did you come to that realization of that thought of, I need to dress different? That was your experience. Some individual, they learned from their own experience.
True.
You know, there's a saying that a wise man learned from somebody else's experience, but, you know, a fool learned from their own, right?
It's not so nice. Oh, okay, from somebody else's, yeah.
Yeah.
Are you calling me a fool?
I didn't say that. But I mean, there's some people just have to learn from their own experience.
Yeah.
We can talk to our faces in the blue about, hey, the impression that you are making towards men or towards women until they have that experience. Then it's like a conviction.
Yeah.
They have to experience the conviction. They have to experience that situation where they did not feel comfortable, where someone objectified them based on their body. There's some people you learn from your own experience.
That's right. And then there's a whole different layer of that. So we haven't even gotten to the race component, an ethnicity component when you're dressing in different environments and different situations, and how that is received or not received. Because again, that's a reality, especially in the U.S. I mean, one of our previous episodes, we talked about hair, right? The Crown Act, right? And hair is also part of how you dress, and you know our views on hair already. But at the same time, so again, in addition to knowing what is appropriate within different settings, you also have to understand that the way you look, the way you were born, so your race, your ethnicity, your color, your hair texture, all factor into your overall appearance.
Yeah. Well, this was good.
Yes, it was.
This was good. I don't think you thought it was going to go this way.
No.
You know, this conversation. I mean, we touched. Excuse me. I don't think that we thought that this conversation would go in all these different directions. You know, I don't think we thought that we would talk about, you know, other genders and talking about, you know, impressions and the business world and here, you know. So this was good.
Yeah.
This was pretty good. I think that I got your viewpoint. You got my viewpoint.
Definitely.
Hopefully we may have a section in the comments where people can share their viewpoints.
That's right. That's right.
Hopefully this was balanced and this, you know, we were able to express how we feel about, you know, dress reform. And I think we were saying that to conclude that there could be a need for dress reform, but, you know, there's a standard that institutions, organizations need to create, you know, for those who represent them on stage, right? And relationships need to be developed with individuals if you feel convicted to address something with someone.
I'm saying, but we still have to continue this conversation. But thank you, Candy.
Yep, not a problem, not a problem. So, yeah, I guess we'll have a part 2.
Yes, we will.
The video was about 35 minutes.
It was long. It was long. The speaker had a lot to say.
Yes,
she had a lot to say about this issue.
And I think we only played a minute and 36 seconds, you know. But this was great, you know. Thank you for taking the time to listen to Triple B, Black, Beautiful, and Brave.
Yeah, it was great as always.
Definitely. So, until next time.
Triple B out.
And there you have it, Queens. Another empowering episode of Triple B in the books.
Remember, the revolution doesn't stop when the episode ends. Keep spreading that Black, beautiful, and brave energy wherever you go.
Stay connected with us on social media. And don't forget to share this podcast with your fellow queens who need a dose of empowerment.
Until next time, keep shining, keep slaying, and keep being unapologetically you.
That's right. Stay fierce, stay fabulous, and remember, your voice is your power. Use it to change the world.
Peace, love, and empowerment, queens. Catch you on the flip side.